A rapidly changing scenario in Boston unfolds, and it has a local connection. Good evening. This is CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone. Thank you for joining us. Well, residents of Boston were awakened to quite a scene this morning, and it looks like it may be another long night as well. Tahira Chrisman is joining us now with an update on that.
Yes, Patty, such a long night. Now, one of the suspects in the Boston bombings is dead. His 19-year-old brother, who is the suspected accomplice, is still on the run, leaving Watertown, Massachusetts, and the nearby communities on total lockdown. All of this stems from Monday's marathon after 2 explosions went off at the finish line, killing 3 and injuring nearly 170 runners. Late yesterday, 26-year-old Tamarlan Tisharneviv and his younger brother Jakar were identified as suspects based off surveillance photos. Things picked up quickly overnight when an MIT officer was fatally shot in his car. It's believed that the brothers killed the officer, Sean Collier, and moments later hijacked another car at gunpoint in Cambridge. When police began to chase the suspects, the brothers allegedly threw explosives out of the windows and shot at officers. That's when response teams fatally wounded Tamarlan and who was wearing explosives at the time. His brother escaped the scene on foot. This morning, Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick ordered residents to stay inside with their doors locked as the intent manhunt for Jakar continues.
We are progressing through this neighborhood, going door to door, street to street. We're well over 60 or 70% of what we want to cover up there. We do not have any development to tell you in terms of that search up there. There has been no apprehension at this point.
I also want to speak to the Watertown community. You've done great. We've done everything we've asked, but we need some more time. We have to stay in your homes, stay in place. As the Colonel said, we still have some work to do. Even after we clear the area, there's a major crime scene down there that's going to take some time. But I've been assured to all the gentlemen behind me that they're not going to leave until the town is safe. So it may go today, tomorrow, and over the weekend before we have that whole crime scene under control. But the Watertown community has always stood strong, and I've asked them to do that this morning, and they've done terrific, and I want to thank them.
Officials have commented on the skill level of these brothers when engaging police. Law enforcement officials say the men must have had some sort of military training. Detectives are saying the manhunt could go through the weekend and continue to warn residents to stay inside, as the youngest suspect is expected to be heavily armed. There are some details about the controlled explosion operated by police at a home nearby. We have a few details about the brothers. They are from Chechnya but have lived in the United States with their parents since 2002. The oldest brother, Tamarlan, is married and has a 3-year-old daughter named Zahar. As you can imagine, the family is heartbroken, but the father believes that his sons are not terrorists and had nothing to do with the bombings. The investigation, Patty, as you can imagine, is still ongoing and still intense.
And by the time when we come back on Monday, I'm sure there will be a lot that's changed in this.
Yes, hopefully.
All right.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Tahira.
Thank you.
Well, meantime, an uncle of the bombing suspects lives in Montgomery Village, just south of Gaithersburg. As CTV's Sonia Srivastava tells us, he's extremely shocked by what's happened and has a message for his nephew.
Well, this is an absolutely pristine neighborhood with manicured lawns, and the cherry trees are now in full bloom. But today it is filled with media from across the country and even across the world. And they are all here because of this house that you see behind me. The uncle of the suspects involved in the Boston bombings lives here. And today he spoke to the media, and he made it very clear that he has not spoken to his nephews in a number of years. And he condemns what happened in Boston.
Jihad, if you're alive, turn yourself in and ask for forgiveness from the victims.
Ruslan Tisarni is pleading with his nephew, 19-year-old Johar Tisarniev, who is still on the loose, to turn himself in. Tisarni, who lives here in Montgomery Village, says he has not spoken to his brother's children since December 2005. He says he's been following the story like everyone else, but never thought his own family would be caught up in all this.
He put a shame on our family, Tsarnaev's family. He put a shame on the entire Chechen ethnicity.
Today, residents in this quiet and cozy neighborhood were awakened by the sounds of helicopters and police sirens. This neighbor, who does not want to be identified, had this to say about the family.
The gutter fell off my house at Snowmageddon, and I called over there, and the nephew said, "Oh, Jesse, I'll come right over." And they came over and fixed picked the gutter up. They're nice.
As the flock of media gathered outside the Tisarni home, many in the neighborhood were just trying to go about their daily routine, like Ron Exler, who had no idea until we told him what was going on.
This is crazy. Wow. Okay, well, I think I'll go home.
I really didn't expect anything like that to happen around here. Even though they're not, closely related anymore, it's still crazy to see it hit so close to home.
Tisarni says his nephew Zhokar and Tamerlan were born in Kyrgyzstan, a Russian region near Chechnya, and immigrated to Boston nearly a decade ago. He admits they have not kept in touch because of personal reasons. Today, he too is left trying to figure out what might have provoked the attack.
Being losers, hatred to those who were able to settle themselves. These are the only reasons I can imagine. We're ashamed. Yes, we're ashamed. They're children of my brother.
Now, the police and the FBI have been in and out of this home all day long, and we will continue to follow the story and bring you the latest developments as it happens. In Montgomery Village, Sonia Shrivastava for CTV News.
Now, several media outlets are reporting that 19-year-old Zokar became a U.S. citizen on September 11th, 2012. Well, as we mentioned, while the massive manhunt continues in Boston, hundreds of thousands of residents are being ordered to stay in their homes. That's just one of several lockdown measures in and around the suburb of Watertown. CTV's Makia Turner has reaction from an Emerson College student who is staying about 20 minutes away from the hot zone.
For hours, hundreds of thousands of residents throughout Boston and bordering suburbs have been under strict police orders to stay inside their homes. And the lockdown measures didn't stop there, as mass transit has been canceled and several businesses and schools have been closed. Now, I spoke to Darian Harvin, who's a student at Emerson College, and she shares an emergency alert that she and others woke up to this morning. And it reads, quote, "Please stay inside your residence hall, apartment, and home, or find shelter and stay there. There is an active police search in Watertown for one of the suspects involved in Monday's attack. The other is believed to be accounted for. We will update you when we know more." Now, on the line from Fenway, which is where Harvin is currently residing, I have her reaction.
And when I woke up and I saw the email, I was really relieved because I didn't feel safe, no matter where they were, in Watertown, near Kenmore Square, whether it was in the city of Boston. I didn't want to leave my apartment because we really had no idea what was going on.
Tell me about the reaction from the students around you.
I think that people are just scared. I think that they're scared and they're fearful because they don't know what's going on, even though the news may be telling us. There are so many conflicting stories. And then we're worried about our friends. We're worried about our family. And, people are turning to social media just to see if we're all okay. And so we're really just pleading for one another to do what the city is telling us to do, which is to stay inside.
Now, Harvin says that she and others aren't sure when they'll be able to return back to school, but Emerson College has asked everyone to stay updated through their emails. From the newsroom, I'm Makia Turner, CTV News.
Meantime, federal authorities are working to build suspect profiles of Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Are they homegrown terrorists or part of a larger transnational network? Rochelle Metzger sits down with a terrorism expert to get his reaction on today's events and the recent revelations of the Chechnyan suspects.
We're learning more tonight about the Boston Marathon bomb suspects, brothers who came to America with their families seeking refuge from the war in Chechnya. It's not known at this time if the men are linked to any insurgent group. I sat down with a terrorism expert and asked him what could make an individual become radical.
One of the areas that many people have pointed at is sort of not really fitting into the new society they've been transplanted into. And we have a term for this, which is called rootedness, is that even though people may move to the US, may have been residing in the US for quite a long time, they sort of remain alienated from US culture.
Gary Ackerman is the acting director of the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism.
They fall back on a perceived culture, even though they might never have actually experienced the culture themselves of their homeland. They have this perceived idea, notion of it, and that's when they might become more susceptible, in some people's theory, and we've been studying this, there are many cases of this, become potentially more susceptible to the message of radical Islam.
Ackerman says he hopes that recent revelations will serve to invigorate immigration reform.
The majority of our immigration enforcement resources are devoted towards dealing with what one would call economic migrants, rather than any migrants that would ever pose a security threat to the United States.
Now, I also asked Ackerman if he thinks we'll see any major security changes as a result of this recent terrorist attack. He says that given the size and the scope of the Boston Marathon, authorities would essentially have to change how we hold sporting events to make them safer. He says you can't create zero risk in an open and free society, and it will be up to us as Americans to decide how we strike the balance between freedoms and civil liberties and public safety. In College Park, I'm Rochelle Metzger, CTV News.
And again, no connection has been made that links the suspects to any insurgency group. But Ackerman says if it turns out that they are, it would be the first time the Chechnyan conflict has reached American shores. Well, local police are beefing up patrols in light of the Boston tragedy. They tell us that you'll notice more officers at the Glow Run 5K at the National Harbor tomorrow. It's merely a precaution since they haven't received any threats against the event. Police say officers are constantly undergoing training to effectively respond to a crisis. Today they showed us some of the techniques that will be used to secure the harbor prior to the race.
We're going to be checking backpacks. We would like everyone to try to leave their backpacks at home. There are no backpacks allowed in the event area, so that would help us. And if we see somebody walking around with a backpack, we're going to stop and talk to them and check it. The other thing that we're going to do is we are going to sweep the entire course and other areas of concern down there with our EOD detection K9 teams, and they will be there for the duration. We're also going to have enhanced course security with more patrols and more officers.
And 3,300 people are expected to take part in that race. Well, you are watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone.